Hello and welcome to Colin Bradley Artcast. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
Hi everyone. We have had a couple of weeks of failed attempts at recording a podcast. You wouldn't believe behind the scenes the amount of fiddling with the internets and routers and trying in different locations to get an episode off the ground. But we've found a temporary solution in that Dad, you're on your iPad smack bang next to your router. So the connection should be strong enough. We have got a new internet line going in. It was meant to go in on Friday. I came down to supervise the engineer installing it and everything like that. Couldn't end up happening on that day. The engineer had some problems, so we're gonna have to wait for that internet to go live another day, which is a bit of a shame. But when that goes in, we should have seamless recordings every week, no technical hitches, and hopefully even live streaming to our various channels like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, so that maybe in the future we can actually broadcast these podcasts live and take questions live and interact with everyone. That would be amazing. But technology is a bit behind us at the moment. We're trying to play catch up, but we've made it work this week. So hooray for this. How are you doing, Dad? How's your week been?
My week's been very good, yes. Yes, we've been out and about a bit and seeing everybody. Saw you just before the weekend and all the family. No, it's lovely. And we've had Folk Week last week. As you know, you came down for one of the days. And that's always very, very busy and very exciting. So we make sure we get to see that. It's really only, the seafront is only, 4 minutes away from where we are. So, and that's where it all happens. So we have grandstand views and have done for 40 odd years now. So we never get tired of that. It's great fun.
Lovely. Love that. Brilliant stuff. So I was looking back at our previous episodes, which I think was a couple of weeks ago now, and the last picture that you were working on was the lion laying down, and I couldn't remember if we showed that final picture because I know you were near the end of it at the episode that we were talking about it, and then we did the horse and bridle commentary episode, and we answered a viewer's question, and I couldn't see that we actually showed that finished picture. So. And because I'm a parent of two young children, my mind I completely blank on things like this. Anything that was the day before is gone. It's wiped it immediately come the morning. So I figured that we'd talk about your finished picture because I do have it here on the computer for us to show people. So apologies if we have gone through this. We're going to go through it again. Because I'm convinced that we didn't actually show your finished picture, Dad. So I'm going to pop it up on screen for everyone to hopefully see. There we go. So you should be able to see that on screen now. I think the last time we were talking about this picture, Dad, if I remember rightly, we were on the final stages. It was nearly done, but you were just adding some more depth and contrast, shadows into those front paws, and I think on the right-hand side.
That's right. Yes. And what I was aiming for here is to make the lion cub stand right out from the background. And I did have concerns about that. And this is the reason why I did the background as well as doing the subject. I mentioned this on the video when I did it. And I think I mentioned it on the podcast, didn't I? And that was the reason I did it. And this has worked really well, and it's worked so well that my next picture, which I'm going to be doing, I'm going to do the same again. I don't know why I've never done it before. It's something I think probably when you've got a picture that is out of focus, and a lot of my pictures have been out of focus, you don't need it then. But when you've got something like this, will it work? I think the original picture, the photographic reference, I was a bit concerned with, because when you take a photograph, you've just got to accept what's in front of you. You can't change that. But when you're an artist and you can change, you can position the subject and the background, and you can alter it and change it which is what I've done here, very slightly. I haven't altered it much, but I've certainly given you, I mentioned there was more room on the left-hand side where the paw was, because that was cut tight before. So I centred him, and it looks absolutely fabulous now. And I did wonder whether I'd made it a little bit too light, but I don't think I did, because he or she, I'm not sure, really stands out well. So no, I was absolutely delighted with this. I think it's probably one of my favourite pictures.
The background, it feels like that is a hard picture to make the subject stand away from the background, because you've put that detail. You haven't blurred that background. You've still got the detail of the foliage.
Mm.
That foliage actually looks quite intricate. How difficult was that to do?
Very hard. That is, I've mentioned many times that trees, and our members have also said that I can't do trees very well. Well, that is a masterclass in how to do, certainly not trees, but the same kind of idea. And again, I wasn't sure whether this was going to work, and it has brilliantly. And I was very, very pleased with it. You just mentioned there that it's not out of focus. Actually, it is slightly, because when I put that in, the detail in, I blurred it slightly with the colour shaper. Now, you're not going to see that, but I did do that deliberately up until where you have the paw sticking out on the left-hand side. Just above that, detail starts. I didn't blur it, and I didn't blur it from there onwards. And it was the same on the other side. You won't be able to see that, but I did actually use a colour shaper, just dragged it along so it fused it a bit, is probably a better description. And I think this
Fantastic.
you don't see it, and it's quite rightly you shouldn't see it, but it did give you then it pushed it back a bit so that the lion cub stands forward. I hope that's technical.
No, it looks great. It looks absolutely fantastic. How big is this picture, out of curiosity, Dad?
A4.
A4.
Yes,
Right.
it's just dead A4 as well. There's no cutting down. The actual depth of the picture was right on the A4.
Interesting.
It's a little narrower than that because you can't do a picture exactly. I would have made it too long if I'd tried doing that. So it's A4 size, which is a good size. I mean, once that was framed in a nice mount and a frame, it would be reasonable size.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also, you've got to get that detail in as well, haven't you? And I bet it's a bit easier when it's a bit bigger, for sure.
That's right. And the mouth particularly, boy, does that stand out. And it did on the original photographic reference. One of the reasons why I chose this. That very dark mouth, gosh.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Well, as we've mentioned before, that picture, you filmed that more as a sort of, not so much as a step-by-step class, but more showing what you can do and loosely, describing what you're doing. This was to push you and to test you and to see what you can do. But I think this one is, people can still log in. We will be editing this class. It will be going on the site, but it's not really, I think you really pushed the boundaries, and really want to set some expectations for some of our students that it's going to be hard to follow. It's not really aimed at those beginner, intermediate. You'd have to be well advanced to try this, because there's going to be things that I suppose, Dad, you'll be expecting people to know and have a certain amount of knowledge going into a picture like this. So really want to set people's expectations when they do this class, because it is going to be hard.
And I think too, my whole aim of this was to show how the pastel pencils work in a situation like this. And you've got, when people take little bits of it, like the markings, for instance, now that is, when you see that being done, it's slightly different to the way that I've done it in the past. Where in the past I've said you've got to put this colour on, you've got to put that colour on, and you'll get that effect. Now this works slightly differently, and I can't really explain to you. You just have to see it and see why I've done it. I return to it instead of doing it, finish, carry on, do a bit more. I return to it several times, enhancing. Now the reason I do that is because when you return to something, you see it slightly differently. Every time you see, oh, I didn't notice that. I've got to do this. If I tried this, see what I mean? It's like bringing something to life. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if people are following me with pencil movements and general technique. But this I didn't. I didn't spare the punches on this. I did it as I would have done as a professional picture. And
Nice.
it comes off very well, and I think people will enjoy watching it more than perhaps than trying to copy it.
Excellent. Nice one. Fantastic. Okay, so I thought we'd also then talk about another class, another picture that you're working on. Let me try and zoom out a bit so that people can see both of these.
Them because I took this deliberately because I wanted to show this is a clouded leopard. And I picked it, look at the original picture for the moment and see how
let's look at that.
Is that going to be? Look at the background. But again, I was struck by that background because the background itself is rocks, actually. You'll see it. You wouldn't see it here because I've cut the picture deliberately, but you can just see it, the bottom left by the mouth there, just indicates what's going to happen. That's in detail, but behind it, those are rocks. So what I had to do there, and you'll see that when we bring the picture up in a minute, you can see that I've fused it. Now again, this is the same idea as the lion. I keep returning to it. So what you're going to see in a minute, when we move up, is the fact that those markings are not finished at all. So I'm working on them and carried on, and I'm still continuing to work on them now to return to it. Again, though, I did the background because I wanted to stand out. And if you look at this picture, which is the original picture that was taken, the ear and the top of the head don't really stand away that much from the background, do they? They kind of fuse into the background, which is okay if that's what you want, but I didn't want that. So if it's possible to move that picture up to the other one, you see that ear now comes alive. I've still got to work on the background, it's not finished yet, but you can see how I'm beginning to orchestrate that background. I mean, it's probably going to be as it is because it's a bit mucky before, you couldn't understand it. So I've done the blurring out a little more, so it's not quite so distinct. Now,
Gotcha.
Whether that will carry on when I finish the whole of the top of that section, I don't know. But that's how it is at the moment.
And what have you used to draw this outline? Is that white trace down?
Yes. To start with, it was white trace down, but I always rub that trace down out. So I've got just a very faint mark, and then I go over it with a pencil. White. So that was a white pencil I used there, a white pastel pencil. The reason I do that, I wanted it to be more sketchy rather than just a line.
Gotcha. Absolutely. And you say those markings you're going to go back to. You're not sort of finishing it and then moving down. You're just doing enough. I'm
doing it in little stages. What I'm after doing now, you see, is the eye. You see the eye not done. Actually, it is now. I've done a little bit more since then. That eye's now been put in. I wanted to do it the way, because I wanted to bring that background down a bit further. And I couldn't do it until I put some of the markings in. But now I'm going to go round that second ear, and then I'm going to be doing that ear.
Wow.
I don't know. There's no hard and fast rule to this, except the way I instinctively look at something. I can see it. I mean, you can't really see there because I put the grey on. Perhaps you just can, because that's the dark grey pastel paper there, and you can just see the 233, which is the bluey grey I've used. You can just see that. That's put in before I put the 181 in, which is the colour that I've used for the marking itself. But those markings are getting there, I would say, but they're not. When you see the finished picture, and I'll try to show it to you next week if I do a little bit more, and you'll see that it's much stronger, deeper. I want to bring the colour out. Just leaving it as it was would be unfinished.
Right. So interesting. So interesting hearing these slightly different approaches. I'm just going to bring this one back up to the original as well, so people have that reference again. It's so interesting seeing you tweak your approach, even at this point in your career, to still go, I'm going to try things differently. I'm going to, do the background with this. I'm going to not finish a bit before I move on. I'm going to move on and then come back to it. And I think that's just a really interesting lesson and takeaway that people will hopefully get from this podcast, is to sort of still be flexible with your approach and the way you do things well into your career.
There's another point that I'll make too, which crossed my mind when I was doing with this picture. You use the minimum amount of pencils that you can get away with. You'd think that wouldn't work. Surely you want more pencils. You want to keep adding in. Not at all. What you do is you wait until you get to the point where I've got just enough pencils now to make that work. Now, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to people, but if you overdo it, put more in than you need, you lose it.
Interesting.
Yes, it is. But I do say this, when people see the video, they'll hear all my thoughts that are going through and all of that, and I mention that as I'm doing it. I'm not saying, there's a lot of pencils being used, but perhaps not as many as perhaps you think you could use. Or, well, I think I'll try that one. Yeah, that's all right, but I think I'll try that one. You could end up putting half a dozen pencils in there when really you didn't need it.
Fascinating.
Interesting.
Really interesting. Yeah, it's great. And it's a great picture as well. I think it's different as well. Something really interesting for our students to check out. So as with the lion, you're filming that one and that will eventually go up. I'm working on a class at the moment that you finished a while back, of the brown bear that's laying down. That's it's going to be another one. You can't remember it, Dad. It's probably a while ago now.
No,
There's a huge back catalogue that I'm going to be working through, but I've edited the first part. I'm just finishing up the rest of the class, and then that should be up in the next week or so. So members will have a brand new wild animal to get their teeth into. But all being well, next week we should be back, maybe with a fancy new connection. But all being well, we'll be back to show the update on the clouded leopard, because I think that's going to be a really interesting and lovely project for people to see progress. As always, if anyone has anything they want us to discuss, any questions or anything like that, then always get in touch with us. Leave us a comment on this video or send us an email, and we'll happily discuss it on the next episode. But for now, we'll leave it there for this week. So thank you everyone for watching and for listening. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
Enjoy your week.